Hello all. So the research paper we are presenting today is a novel crypto system based on a DNA cryptography and randomly generated Mealy machine. So today we three people are going to present Manav, Bhavya and Chinmay. So let me take you to the introductory walkthrough before we deep dive into the topic. So the data, so the data is very crucial part of our life, and it is being produced at an alarming rate. It is crucial to store the data and hence and also securely encrypt the data. So cryptography is commonly used technique to ensure the data security. And today we will be discussing one such novel crypto system, which is based on DNA cryptography and finite automata theory. So cryptography is the most important and highly used solution for ensuring data security. It is a booming field in cryptography, which is emerged from DNA computing. So basically, in DNA cryptography, a key pair generator is used, which generates two keys, public key and private key, which are given to both sender and receiver. And using these two keys, ciphertext and other important parameters can be transmitted between the sender and the receiver. So in the paper it's summarized by basically three important points. Uh, so it uses a 2256 bit secret key, DNA coding, and a Mealy machine. So a key pair generator is used to generate the keys for the sender and receiver, which I discussed earlier, and this is used for secure exchanging of parameters between the sender and receiver. To prove that this scheme is more efficient than the existing scheme, in the paper there are many experimental results which we will be presenting. So let's take a look at the background. So basically DNA is made up of molecules which are known as nucleotides, and each nucleotide consists of a single base, and there are four kind of bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine and guanine. A DNA based encryption are stored using these DNA bases, which are named as A, T, C and G. They're short forms. So we will be also using a Mealy machine. So basically a Mealy machine is a machine whose output is dependent on the current state of the machine and the current input. So, so the role of a Mealy machine is to read each DNA base presented in the DNA sequence and to make a substitution with another DNA base. So let's take a look of a structure of a randomly generated Mealy machine. So it consists of 5-tuple definition where there are 4 states 0, 1, 2 and 3. There are 4 input signals A, T, C and G, and 4 output signal A, T, C and G. So, and the starting state here is Q0 and the final state is randomly generated along with the transition. So I will be hand overing to Manav.
So what you see in front of you is a basic diagram of a transition diagram of what a Mealy machine looks like. As you can see, the green circles are the states, and the arrows mark the transitions of the diagram. And there are the input symbols and the output symbols. On the left of the slash mark are the input, and the right are the output symbols. Now going forward. Going forward to the next slide. This is the proposed scheme of the proposed solution or the proposed system. As you can see, the schema or the system will be composing of three entities mainly: the key pair generator, the sender, and the receiver. To discuss the workflow, as you can see, we have already included the diagram, which is self-explanatory in itself. So first of all, the sender and the receiver both contact the server for the key generation, and once the key is generated, the key is distributed to them respectively. At this point, the keys are not known to each other. That is, the sender does not know the receiver key, nor does the receiver to the sender. And once this is done, the receiver contacts the sender with his information and credentials, which the sender will authenticate by sending this information to the server. And once it's done, the server will be send the authentication notification to the sender, and then the registration acknowledgement is generated, which the sender will give to the receiver that yes, he is an authenticated receiver, and the operation may proceed with data request and ciphertext with parameters. Moving on to the next slide, the system phases. So basically our system is comprised of 6 phases, as you can see. First of all is system setup. So discussing what would be coming up in the system setup is that will be the first 4 transitions as we saw, that is the request of key generations and its distribution would come under system setup. Second is receiver registration. So after the setup, the receiver will send his or her credentials, which will be comprising of some important fields such as personal account number, email identity, and media access control. And based on these fields that are passed in the encrypted form, the sender confirms the authenticity of the receiver from the using the server, as I mentioned, and then the acknowledgement is provided. Third phase is the key generation, where the sender performs the key generation process based on receiver fields that are passed, and they are decrypted using sender's private key and receiver's public key. The values are converted into ASCII codes, and let's see the conversion and the detailed steps further. Generation of DNA based Mealy machine. Post this slide we'll be referring to this as DNA which is DNA based Mealy machine. So it follows some basic steps which I'll explain you. So for generation of a Mealy machine, first of all you need to sender generates a state table and output table. So as you saw a randomly generated Mealy machine diagram earlier, just like that, for the same a state table and a output table will be created, and for that corresponding characters will be replaced, and as soon as it is generated we can convert each string into a ASCII value, and then the ASCII value into binary values, and finally will form a 256-bit binary number, which will be our ciphertext. And this ciphertext is not the final ciphertext. The final ciphertext will be generated by inputting this intermediate final text ciphertext into the Mealy machine, and then again reversing it and inputting again, so that we have two extra layers of ciphering, and then we perform data encryption and decryption in the 6th phase. So the next slide, as you can see, these are the tables. As I mentioned, the conversion of characters to ASCII values and ASCII to binary codes can be seen in the table 3, and DNA basis formation, which would be necessary for generating the randomly generated DNA Mealy machine, would be used from table 4. Moving on to next slide. So this is the basic algorithm for encryption and decryption. So these represent phase 5 and phase 6. As you can see, first we would start with the each character with the input text, which would be a plain text. We'd convert them into ASCII values and their ASCII conversion to binary, and then we would generate ciphertext as by the steps mentioned earlier. And as you can see, the details are provided. We would XOR and other operations are performed. As soon as the ciphertext is intermediate ciphertext is created, we then provide it to the DNA Mealy machine based on the first base that was created. The reverse, then we get the output as DNA D2 string. We reverse the string, and then we again provide it as input to the Mealy machine, and then the final output received is the ciphertext. To decrypt the algorithm, we just reverse the steps mentioned in the encryption algorithm, and as soon as you get the intermediate ciphertext, you revert all the conversions and you would be good to go with the plain text, the message that the user intends to send. Now handing over to Bhavya.
In this section, we are going to see the security analysis of the proposed system. First is the brute force attack. In the brute force attack, the intruder tries to guess the secret key used for encryption. But in the proposed solution, the encryption process takes place using a 556-bit secret key. So the attacker has to make two raised to 256 guesses. to hack the key, which is nearly impossible. So we can say that the proposed system is found to be resilient to brute force attacks. Second is the known plain text attack. The known plain text attack is where the attacker tries to access the ciphertext and its plain text. The goal is to guess the secret keys and to develop a technique that can be used for decrypting the messages. In the proposed system, just Manav mentioned, XOR operation is performed between two bits of the plain text and the corresponding bits of the secret key to generate a new binary string. Further, the string is replaced by a DNA by the DNA basis as per the random DNA coding rule that we saw earlier. Hence, any two similar plain texts that are encrypted to make two ciphertexts which are entirely different. Thus, the system is able to withstand the known plain text attack. Ciphertext only attack is the third type of attack. In the ciphertext attack, the attacker tries to access several encrypted messages. The main aim of the attacker is to recover as many plain text messages as possible to guess the secret key. Once the encryption key is hacked, decrypting all the messages encrypted using this key is possible. But in the proposed system, the transition tables used in the Mealy machine are randomly generated for every data transmission. So we can say that the DNA sequences generated for two similar ciphertexts during decryption are completely different. Hence, our proposed solution is able to withstand ciphertext only attacks. Fourth is the differential cryptanalysis attack. A differential cryptanalysis attack is considered as a method of analyzing pairs of plain text and its corresponding ciphertext to hack the key or precise or to be precise to minimize the time needed to get the key. The proposed system is secure against this attack as a new secret key is generated by using different attributes of the user and a randomly generated Mealy machine. The same plain text gets converted into many ciphertexts during each transmission and thus it improves the security. Next is the man in the middle attack. In this type of attack, an unauthorized user intentionally eavesdrop the traffic between the sender and the receiver. Her aim is to get the details of the receiver to access to the sender's message. But in the proposed solution, since both the keys are kept secret and not shared with anyone except only the authorized users, the proposed system resists the man in the middle attack. Next and last is the phishing attack. In the phishing attack, a malicious user tries to retrieve the personal information of the receiver. This can be the user sensitive information which he she tries to steal and again access and get access to the sender's message. But the proposed system makes it impossible for the user to try to gain access of the messages using a phishing attack. Moving on to the next slide. In this section, we can see that the proposed solution is compared with three previously proposed solutions, namely Kundal, Pramanik, and Paul. Observing the graph 1 named as figure 3, we can see that the encryption time may not be of much difference, but in the long run, a proposed scheme's encryption time is proved to be much more less than the previously proposed solutions. In the next graph named as figure 5 key generation time, we can see that the key generation time is observed to be far less than the key generation time required by the other three solutions. Similarly, we move on to the next slide to compare our proposed solution with Kundal, Pramanik, and Paul solutions. We observe that the proposed solution's algorithmic encryption time, decryption time, key generation time, and key retrieval time is much less than the other algorithms. Similarly, when comparing our solution On a basis of a case study, we can see a tremendous drop in encryption and decryption time taken by the proposed solutions algorithm for different plain text lengths, proving that our proposed solution is effective and faster. Now we reach the conclusion of the paper. This paper proposes a novel crypto system for secure data transmission from sender to the receiver. A 256-bit secret key is generated and plain text undergoes various cryptographic operations and converted into a DNA sequence. A randomly generated Mealy machine is used for coding the DNA sequence, making the ciphertext more secure. The proposed scheme supports security against various security attacks. Experimental results shows that the proposed system performs with better encryption time, decryption time, key generation, and key retrieval time when compared with existing systems. The proposed solution is also better than the existing schemes as far as the throughput of the system is considered. The future work is to demonstrate the proposed scheme mathematically. Moving on to the references that the proposed solution took, these are the references. Thank you for your time.